Looks like we're live.
Hello! La, la, la to all of you people that are here on Monday afternoon, Generational Change. I'm Jen.
I'm Peter, and we are going to be on in the afternoon both days this week.
We did talk about that previously, that we were going to switch over. We realized people will be slow to catch on, and that's fine because, as I've always said, this show was never created as some sort of like punchy live stream as much as it was created to be an in-depth podcast. So given that all of our stuff is available after the fact, I don't mind whether or not people watch it live. Like, that's all. Like, that's never, you know what I'm saying? I mean, it's fun when there's a good chat, like it's nice. But for me, it's more important that people get the information than for us to have live viewers.
Yeah, so here's what you guys need to know going forward. So our shows Monday and Thursday will stay, but it will fluctuate between 1 p.m. and 9 p.m. So it's going to be one of those two times. That's what's most accommodating. At least we've kind of put it out there. We know Steve, our friend Steve Grumbine, likes to come on at like 8 o'clock.
And we will do that for him. No.
But generally speaking, we'll also do it for Jordan. Sheridan.
Yes, we have our early birds, and if you feel the need to
He's
request,
still cut for the early bird.
If somebody does have the need to be one of our early bird guests, we can accommodate. But yeah, I mean, this is a good time in the afternoon, and 9 is generally.
Travers, Colinello, Ray J, Schulte, Rutherford. Make sure you smash that like button, share, subscribe to all those things. Make sure this gets out there to everybody. You know, there's obviously a lot of stories going on right now. And of course, we're going to get into what's the topic of the day, which is going to be the topic of many, many days to come, unfortunately, because it's only going to get worse. But one of the topics that we want to cover before we get to our wonderful guest, David Griscom, for the first time from Left Reckoning, which will be fun because I got a bone to pick with a number of people, and he'll be a good person to talk about that with. You know, we've talked a lot about one of the biggest problems that we see in our political arena, which I think doesn't get nearly enough attention. And that is the fact that we do have what is known as the political consultant class, or as Jen likes to say, the white-collar carny class, because that's what these guys are. They are not in this for an ideology, for a cause.
I call them white-collar campaign carnies.
Or white-collar campaign carnies, sure. Take that. But they are, and for those of you who are wondering what this is all about, okay, I'm just going to get to this really quick.
It's so, and nobody will.
You know what this is? It's the sound of the smallest violin playing the quietest tune. So for Halloween, and I did go out last night for a little bit.
Okay.
I was Mr. Pink from Reservoir Dogs, and that was a lot of fun.
I'm so glad you got to live your dream and do that.
Don't tell me your freaking name. So this is the last time you're going to see this facial hair. This facial hair is going away.
Thank you.
Yeah, I know. Well, listen, I don't really like it to begin with because it just doesn't look right on me, and it's kind of this funny, fuzzy feeling.
You're not hairy enough to really grow it
full.
No,
I can't. Listen.
And I know.
I'm actually 40, but I still grow hair like I'm a teenager. Like I can't, to grow this that you see here, this took like 3 weeks.
I know. I've been suffering. I feel like I've been suffering through this for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
I will be glad to see it go, and I'm sure it will be accommodated by a facial and a roller and your whole thing.
One big difference between me and Steve Buscemi is that I do tip. I don't believe in tipping because, you know, unless your service is like well above and beyond, and of course, I would imagine Mr. Pink doesn't support the labor class. We support the labor class. So that's important.
Did you wear a pink suit?
I did not wear a pink suit, but I let everybody know I'm Mr. Pink.
Should have at least been wearing a pink tie.
Yeah, I could have done that, but
I'm just saying.
Limited.
Yeah.
So as we were saying, you know, the white-collar campaign carny class is a very big problem, and no bigger example can we give you than Steve Schmidt. So for those of you who obviously know who Steve Schmidt is.
Which I didn't.
Yeah. Well, no, you knew who he was.
No, I didn't know who he was. You told me who he was because most people don't know these things.
So the fact is, Mr. Schmidt was the campaign manager for John McCain when he ran for president back in 2008. And he is the person who also selected Sarah Palin to be Mr. McCain's vice president. So you already have an idea right off the bat, 15 years ago, mind you, of what this guy's all about and what he, you know, his political judgment is so far off. And yet today he has, on the low end of the bar, a net worth of over $10 million. Now, what exactly?
Right, and this was the genius that brought us Sarah Palin.
Mm-hmm. So what exactly this guy did to deserve such accolades is no different than what you would say about somebody like Rick Wilson. If you go back and you look at the messaging, the things that these guys have said over the course of many years, everything is catered towards how am I going to get my next big payday by grifting my way through the political arena. Think of Neera Tanden on the Democratic Party side.
I'd rather not.
Even think of somebody like Karl Rove.
Oh, I definitely don't want to think of
Karl Rove. These are the types of people that we're talking about.
I hate talking about these people.
Steve Schmidt recently went on one of the local big podcast, or I should say the biggest local podcast that we have here in South Florida, Patrick Bet David, PBD, Valuetainment. And one of the conversations that was being discussed was Ukraine and Russia, and then ultimately Israel-Palestine. And watching that type of a talking head knee-jerk react to everyone as a sexist, an anti-Semite, a racist, it's all the same talking points. And yet somehow this guy, this grifting schmuck, is the campaign manager of Dean Phillips, who's now running in the Democratic primary against Biden and Marianne Williamson.
Well, but it sounds right, because this does not sound like somebody with good judgment. So it makes sense that he would be running a campaign with extremely flawed judgment.
You can imagine what his payday is going to be like, too, because let's face it, that's what it's all about.
Well, yeah, they're just trying to have an income. Well, I don't know that that's why Dean Phillips is in it, but anybody working for this is just wanting to get their payday because they don't have a campaign to be on right now. But what's worse, though, is that this is happening within the party that I'm thinking about people who have no idea that the campaign manager of this guy is the same person who is McCain's campaign manager. Like, people really have no idea that these are chameleons.
I don't even know if you would call them chameleons at this point. I would consider them to be pretty transparently horrible.
Right. No, I just mean they can change color. They're red or blue. They don't care.
Wherever the money.
Right. They're mostly 100%. Just green.
That's why you hear. That's why
not good green.
Roger Stone, Kellyanne Conway. They're all out there. They all are looking for their money. That's the bottom line.
It's gross.
So here's a clip of the best of Mr. Steve Schmidt
of Mercury Public Affairs, and leads the firm's operation in California. He is known as one of the top political strategists in the country. He managed the Schwarzenegger campaign, of course, in 2006. The New York Times referred to it as particularly remarkable, given that the governor appeared to be all but finished just 6 months ago. Before the Schwarzenegger campaign, Schmidt served as a member of the White House senior staff as deputy assistant to the president and counselor to the vice president.
But over 5 months have passed since the election, and in gratitude for your contributions to our party and out of concern for its future success, I appreciate this opportunity to share a few thoughts with you today about the direction our party takes as it seeks to recover the support and the trust of the American people. To state the obvious, the Republican Party needs to grow.
Pain through the prism that we're on a trajectory to lose, that it was the worst environment that a Republican candidate's ever had to run for the presidency in, and our job was to try to figure out how to win. I was in the middle of the Bush campaign in 2004, which was a tough but 50-50 race. This was a race where we had to have an intercession. We needed an event to take place. We needed to take risks.
Roughly up to a week before the convention, we were still talking very seriously about Senator Lieberman, but we had always believed that in order for that to work, it would have to be a total surprise. We would have to go out and sell it to conservatives who would be against it and try to convince them that this would give us our best chance for victory.
How did you pivot then from Joe Lieberman to Sarah Palin?
When we were looking at how to win the fall campaign, and we always believed it was an uphill struggle, we were running against a historic candidate who was a very good candidate.
Well, he all but declared Fox News to be American state TV. Extraordinary. Secondly, with regard to CNN International, with people who live in autocratic countries, who live behind a veil of totalitarianism, CNN International, they thirst for that news coverage because it's a truth to them. It speaks to what's happening in the world and all of its cruelty, its injustice, but also the magnanimity, the hope that comes from the notion of free people.
I have to come on here. I want to let you know that he ran my campaign back in 2006.
I don't
job.
like it because you make Arnold sound like, I don't know, like if Arnold and like Shrek had a baby.
We're able to bring together the Republicans and Democrats that came together. We had this great team, and this guy Steve Schmidt, he was my guy.
Ugh, he's gross.
He's a terrible guy, and
he's just gross.
The fact that he's from New Jersey and he talks that way. When he was talking in that press conference, it sounded like he was just trying to split him. He couldn't decide whether he was on the West Coast or in the Deep South. But he was like trying to mend it together somehow, but it didn't make any sense.
It's not good.
And on top of everything else, the guy's a loser. Everything he touches turns to dust. Everything. But he just happened to have been, and it wasn't like he was on this Schwarzenegger campaign where he had this amazing victory. He was on he was running the incumbent. And at the time, he was pretty popular. Now, of course, that all went to hell in his second term, but that's neither here nor there. The point being is that
it was due to no success on his part.
Well, think of it this way. James Carville, for some reason, is still revered as a political consultant, even though that guy hasn't won a political race in over 3 decades. So, you can kind of just live off of your past success. It's the Don Shula effect.
I call it the Don Shula effect.
It really stinks that it's that way, but Schmidt is the embodiment of that problem. And the fact that the Lincoln Project in 2020 was able to bring in millions of dollars, we're Republicans who are against Donald Trump. And yet there's like a Republicans for Trump big account on Twitter in particular, and they're fawning over Joe Biden. It's like, come on, how do you guys not see through this crap? This is just about making money.
They're all the same.
It's all grifting. It's all money.
Same.
It's not about actually helping people.
Nobody cares about helping people.
Well, if anybody's going to talk about helping people, our esteemed guest, I think, would know a thing or two about that, because I think that's actually pretty important. Why is that important?
To help people, because people need to be educated. Sometimes what worries me the most is that most of the time the people that need the information are not the people that get the information, and then the people that watch the information already know the information, and we just sort of confirmation bias, like echo chambers. That is something, and that is my concern, because more people. And the other thing is that when we talk about shows like Left Reckoning, or like when I even say like This Is Revolution, I was so happy once they did a crossover. It was sort of like that when the Billy Joel Elton John concert happened for me. It was really cool. But anyway, those guys, because they talk smart. And no, they do. They talk smart. And I've had that on before, and my husband's like, yeah, I don't understand.
Well, this is a crossover we've been looking forward to, and definitely one where punches will not be pulled, because let's face it, this is all about the left labor movement and recognizing the faults of today, and who better than David Griscom. Welcome to Generational Change.
Well, thank you all so much. I'm really happy to be here.
Hi, it's so nice to meet you. I have been watching you for so long. You were one of the original people that I watched way back when. I don't remember which configuration of other people that you were talking with at the time. I want to say Ben Burgess. Does that sound right?
Could be.
Okay. Yeah. I forget. But anyway, so big fan. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, really. Thank you so much. I'm really thrilled to be here with y'all.
So, and I know that you also have cross-pollinated with Jason Miles and that group too. So it's like, I feel like you guys have a really cool club thing going. And yeah. But thank you so much for me. I wish that there was anything good to talk about. Well, then again, if there was really good things to talk about, we wouldn't exist probably. We wouldn't probably have the All Is Well and Perfect Happy podcast show.
We do have one good thing to talk about. Obviously UAW, Sean Fain leading the charge.
Okay.
That's of course going to get completely covered up. Not a surprise. But the fact that we really do have this consensus, if you will, in terms of where the left political energy really is, which it kind of almost 1,000% needs to be in labor at this point. Hey, look, you know what? If Sean decided tomorrow that he was running for president of the United States, even if it was in the Democratic Party, I'd be like, hey, have at it, brother. We'll support you, because those are the types of people that we need as leaders in this country.
Mm-hmm. No, and what we're getting out of this first round of these tentative agreements is is huge, both in concessions from the company, but I think most critically, and one of the reasons that I've been such a big fan of Sean Fain is like, one, all the stuff we all agree on, right? Incredible communicator. His videos are awesome. He's wearing an Eat the Rich t-shirt. It's great. But then he can also talk about the Bible and all this other kind of stuff. He's really great at what he does. But he's really shown himself to be a different kind of labor leader. And one thing that I'm really excited about from these early announcements is that they have their contract to expire on May Day in 2028. And they're already calling for other unions to have their contracts expire on May Day 2028. And this is one thing that we really need in the U.S. labor movement. It's been something that, Democratic Socialist labor advocates have been arguing for a long time, is getting labor unions to be able to be coordinating with each other. So it's not just an isolated flexing of working class muscle, but the potential of having, huge unions going on strike, negotiating together is truly massive. And I think for a lot of people on the U.S. left who are still sort of like getting the ins and outs of labor and learning about this, they might miss how huge this call is from the UAW to sort of expand the labor movement, at least in the sense of coordinating between different kinds of unions.
Yeah, he is definitely the most exciting thing to happen to labor. You know what I mean? Like it's one of he's going to make labor cool again, right? Like I really feel like that he could have shirts like that, Sean Fain. Yeah. I do kind of really love him. I've done call me Sean, but yeah, we haven't been able to get him on as of yet. Maybe he'll be less busy if things settle down a little bit and he'll be able to come on the show.
I know. I always feel bad. Sorry. I always feel bad when you see somebody like that who you like 100% I want to have them on as a guest, but it's like, do I really want to bother this guy who's like working their butt off right now to come on my little show? I know the feeling.
Yeah, well, that's his job. I tell him who I want and he bothers them to get them on the show. So I kind of have plausible deniability about it. Guys, this is one of the downfalls of doing an afternoon show. If you guys hear, they're doing like there's the lawn people or the blower people are out there. So forgive us.
And I'm mute back and forth.
Yeah. I don't know how distracting. If you hear it, it's loud here, but I don't know if you guys hear it.
I think it's important to always try to figure out where the positives can be found, because right now it is just nothing but negative headline after headline. And of course, we're seeing in real time just how completely corporate captured almost every elected representative is in this country. And it comes full circle when you're dealing with the issue of Israel-Palestine and the complete denial that is out there is very, very disturbing. And one of the things that I think we should do right off the bat is to show you, look, we called out Senator Fetterman for saying what he said, which was absolutely insane. It wasn't even a little bit of a nuanced response. It was
disappointing.
Very disappointing. Give me exactly what you want me to say, and I will say it. Even though his next election isn't until 2028, it's as if I can't take any chances. I don't want to be on anybody's bad side. But what happened last night was really bad. For those of you who don't know, and forgive me, David, do you remember the gentleman's name who attended this event?
No, I don't have it off the top of my head. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Colin, if you have that, if you can put it in the description, really appreciate it.
It's in the video.
It is in the video.
Oh,
okay, great, perfect.
Thanks.
All right, so we're going to play a clip real quick of this gentleman who is a constituent in Pennsylvania who wanted to speak, and very cordially, with Senator Fetterman about how he's been handling the current situation that's happening in Israel-Palestine. You're not going to like it.
No, I'm
Why don't you support a humanitarian ceasefire? I'm with the senator's team. If you'd like, I can talk to him. No, I can talk to. I voted for him. I'm sorry, this is a democracy. It absolutely is. Yeah, but kind of, sort of. Why? 10,000 people in Gaza have been killed, half are children. The Pope's calling for a ceasefire. The UN has called for it. I'm just asking you. You're a good guy. I voted for you. I know you're a nice guy. This is important. You need to leave. Here, can I give you a phone? I asked you Senator a question. I asked you a question.
He just assaulted him. He just assaulted him.
You need to leave.
He just assaulted him. He just assaulted him. He was just talking to him. He's assaulted him.
would seem to me that that was a very, very polite approach to the senator, saying, listen, I voted for you. I like you. I'm trying to have a nuanced conversation here. Get out of here, buddy. You're not allowed in here. And it turns out that that guy wasn't even like an owner of the bar. That was a staffer of Fetterman's that shoved him out of the bar. Not a good look.
No.
I mean, it's truly horrendous, and complete contempt for Fetterman. I mean, he's released some statements that are so bloodthirsty. It's almost hard to read them. Not only not supporting a ceasefire, but in fact justifying the mass slaughter of Palestinians. It's horrific. It's been really disappointing too. I have to say, usually I won't, go this far, but his staff has been horrible too. His staff has been on Twitter chiding and harassing and insulting Palestinian peace activists. It's been extremely, extremely disappointing. And Ben Burgess wrote about this early on when Fetterman was running for Senate, about how awful he was on Palestine. And it really gets to, I think, this fundamental question that the progressive movement has been sort of wrestling with, right? I mean, people who know me know where I fall on the issues that we should be supporting Palestine, even if it means going up against DMFI money and things like that. But there's been this kind of tactical thing. It's like, oh, well, maybe we can sort of accept some kind of statements from elected officials. They don't want to have to go up against a bunch of money. It might swing the race. But Fetterman, I think, is a pretty crystal clear example of somebody who might have thought, oh, maybe he's just saying these kind of things when he's running to protect his back end. No, this is a guy who not only is not taking the right position on this, is in fact like cheerleading and playing a leading role in the support for the mass slaughter of Palestinians right now. It's horrific.
Yeah, this is very problematic. And I think I understand what you're saying, like, because as somebody who is Jewish and grew up very Zionist, it took me many years of deprogramming. And it's sort of like this, it's like mental gymnastics. And the more you see, the more mental gymnastics you have to do. And then eventually for people that like come out of it, we're like, all right, I just can't keep doing that anymore. But you have this whole group of people that live in this zone where everything would be completely unacceptable if it were any other country except for Israel, right? So, and it's this like state of acceptance that we all just live in. And I am at the point now, like with people that are elected people, content creators, people that we know have access to the information, that there's no excuse to not know. And so you're either being willfully ignorant or you're lying. And that is an unacceptable place to be for anybody that we elect. So it's sort of like, if you are supportive of an ethno state and thereby an ethno cleanse, okay, so be it, but own that and stop gaslighting us like you're trying to tell us this is a democracy. And I completely reject it. I think they're all a bunch of cowards, especially the Jews. Shame on every single Jew in Congress that does not take a stand on this. And I don't know whether or not they believe their own stuff. Like a lot of them are just willfully ignorant Zionists because they don't want to know the truth, or if they're scared of AIPAC. It really doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. Because if you're willfully ignorant and or lying, you're a coward either way. So you just don't belong there. Like I am so beside myself, angry. And every time these things come up and I look on the list of who said we should do this and who said not, nary a Jew, nary a Jew. It's shameful.
And then you have the president who compounds this in such a horrific way by not only forget not calling for a ceasefire. He's going on national TV saying that the Palestinians are lying about how many people are dead. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, that it's not actually 8,000 women and children that have been killed already. Let's just say it's 6,000. I guess that's not so bad, right? It gets to the point where...
Well, how many Palestinians per Jew? Like, that's really what it comes down to. What was that Egyptian, the comedian that was trying to get Piers Morgan to tell him, exactly how many Palestinians per Jew.
But how much mental gymnastics are you going to do on this issue? And the fact that, Bernie, for example, hasn't come out and said anything related to a ceasefire, just says we need to get the humanitarian aid.
I don't even want you to do it when he's like this.
It's not good enough. forget that it's not good enough. It's just, it's so egregiously unacceptable because they know what they're doing. And just when stories get leaked and they let you know exactly what's going on, you know, when they talk about they're literally dumping like sewage from above onto it's nuts.
Well, and this has been going on for years. That's the part, right? Like, isn't that ultimately, David, what's the most infuriating thing is that if you're watching the news and to them, this all started on October 7th.
No, I mean, absolutely. And like, you know, I try to walk the line because like, we have to be like shocked and outraged about this. And I am. But like, there's an aspect to this that is, I know why it happens, right? I know why the U.S. government does this. I know why the media does this, because they're trying to maintain this position because it helps out like American imperial interests. But there is an aspect to this where it's fairly frightening to live in a country right now and to just see the line that is going on. It really does make you feel like you're going crazy to see somebody like Joe Biden denying the death tolls. And why is he doing that? He's doing that so that now every newspaper or publication that reports on the death says the Hamas-run Gaza Health Ministry, right? To try to undermine the point. When it's absolutely clear, and almost anybody who, you know, spends any time looking at this can see very clearly what's going on, that this is an attempt at mass slaughter, at exodus of the Palestinian people. You know, you saw these weird, you know, give some people a little bit of grace because they're young. But I saw some of these like young, like Youth for Biden accounts and things like that being like, oh, wow, Joe Biden is trying to help evacuate Gazans from Gaza, you know, without recognizing that, first of all, no, because Israel was bombing the southern border, so people can't get out, even if that was their intention. But two, people recognize that if they leave Gaza, they will not get back. And I don't think that some people understand that like if you leave, you do not have the ability to come back into the country, which means the people in Gaza, again, for people who aren't as familiar, like a significant proportion are people who are refugees from other parts of Palestine who have been pushed into Gaza. Right. So already you've been kicked out of your home. Now this is, you know, where you're living. Yeah. And if you get pushed out of Gaza, you're not going to be able to come back. You know, so there's just like this attempt to lie, to sort of lean into some people's ignorance. I have to say that while the U.S. government is very clearly on one side, I have been extremely heartened to see some of the response from the American population, some of these protests that we've been seeing the movement on this question that we've seen over the past couple of weeks has been inspiring. It's incredibly dark because it's not enough, frankly. But, you know, there's a worse scenario where like there's just flat out denial from the American public about what's going on instead of some of the movements that we've been seeing in support of human dignity and support of Palestinian rights. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, like the Democratic Party has truly shown itself to be extremely comfortable with mass slaughter and mass murder, with supporting a rogue state like Israel, which again, you know, has been shown time and time again to not only not care about the Palestinians, but also just to have no care at all for the truth. Remember, this is a state that, you know, killed, you know, an American citizen very recently, Shireen Abu Akleh. And what did we get from the U.S. government there, right? Like every Palestinian life matters. Don't get me wrong here. But when you have a government, the Israeli government, killing American citizens, and you don't even really get any real serious response from the United States government, I mean, that is contemptible. That is an evacuation of any duty that you have for your citizens. And just one last thing, I will say, you know, we at the beginning of the conflict, we had Maureen Kaki on the program, who's a Palestinian American from here in Texas. And, you know, one of the things we were talking about with there's like, you know, with all of the things that are going on in Gaza, I mean, what message is this government giving to you as an American citizen about how they even view you? They view you differently than they view another American citizen. And that's a horrible thing to realize. And not just like Joe Biden and Congress, but your city council officials, not all of them, but, you know, a lot of like local officials saying these kind of things. I mean, what does that mean for you and your ability to participate in this society, to participate in democracy? I mean, it's truly horrific.
Yeah, well, we're not, if you think about it, we see the same stuff here. We see the same stuff here in different places, and it plays out in different ways. But the level of othering, the level of violence, whether it's how we treat people at the border, whether it's how we police different areas, like we see this complete, like, it really is very, very authoritarian. It's happening. Obviously, some states are worse than others. We're in Florida. So, you know, like I've lost bodily autonomy here. And so it's worse in some places than others, but overall, we're definitely seeing increased like censorship, increased policing, increased, like we're really seeing this authoritative clampdown on all forms of dissent. And and it's definitely worse in places that have less resources and are not us. And then, you know, it's so much easier for us to other people that we don't even see here.
You know, and like Palestine is the future. I mean, this is a real threat you know, not just in the sense of like what Palestinians are going through today, but this is, I think, a very vivid example of a lot of the violence that goes into maintaining certain systems of government, be it the American system or the Israeli system, is just the brutalization of millions of people. And you know, the Palestinian fight is all of our fight in that way, in that like this is a direction that we're seeing across the globe of these far right, more authoritarian, anti-democratic governments coming to power, be they in the United States or be they in Israel. And it's a playbook. I mean, you know, one thing that Black Lives Matter did a very good job of, for example, during those protests, was sort of drawing the line between how Americans are policed, how Americans are abused, how Americans are killed by our security apparatus, and how there's a relation there to what Israel does to the Palestinians, be it in training, be it in tactics, be it in the weaponry and things that are used against civilians. I mean, these things, you know, they have trickle-down effects on all of us.
I really think that this is a watershed moment, and it's been that way for a number of years now. But you know, everywhere we look at something that's probably more unique to the current times than what we've generally seen before. And as Jen, you've always liked to point out, the issue of Israel-Palestine has been turning for some time, but not like it's turning right now. This is turning in a way that is going to completely flip the electorate. I mean, if you look at what happened over the weekend, and we're going to play the clip in a minute, it's not that it gives you hope. It actually gives you confidence. And that's a complete difference between thinking, well, maybe this is a moonshot. No, this is actually, we're the ones with the ball in our court now. And we're the ones who are going to dictate these terms. You're not only on the wrong side of history, but you don't have the numbers to back up your bullshit anymore.
What video are you playing? Are you playing my tribe's people, my JVP
Your
people?
tribe people. Jen's tribe people.
My tribesmen?
They proved, of all places, you know,
Is this the Grand Central Station?
You know, a lot of people thought that where you would be afraid to pull this off would be a place like New York City, where the biggest Zionist population in the country resides in Brooklyn. But obviously the second biggest, of course, is down here in the Miami area.
Oh, JVP's been killing it.
But they have been standing up, and then some. So here we go.
Here today in New York City, in front of the New York Stock Exchange, are the weapons manufacturers that are dropping bombs on Gaza being traded.
Peace. People should be able to live in peace and security. We have to study the history of Palestine. Jewish people lived in Palestine despite any difference of religion. The difference of religion is not the cause for conflict. We lived in peace until this movement of Zionism, this criminality came in to the region and destroyed everything. We have to stop the root cause to the problem in its entirety.
It makes me happy.
You know, credit to JVP, because they had to coordinate this on a very careful level regarding how this word got out to everybody, to thousands of people, and said, look, we're meeting at Grand Central Station at this time. Don't tell anybody, just go, because they knew that the riot gear police were going to be ready the second they sensed that there was a big gathering, but they timed it perfectly and they basically shut it down. And, it became a national story, whether they like it or not. Now, of course, they're going to, you know what corporate media is going to do. They're going to say that these are all a bunch of idiots and, they're everybody's an anti-Semite now.
Even Rabbi Rosen,
but David,
who got arrested, I think, at the Capitol.
The big problem here, and this is what I've been trying to emphasize to people as a neutral observer, the harder you push for the ethnic cleanse, the longer you allow this genocide to go on, the worse anti-Semitic instances in this country and around the world are going to get. It's a reaction to an action. Everyone wants to pretend like, oh my God, we got to kill these Palestinians because they want to bring genocide to the Jewish people. No, actually, it's the complete opposite.
Yeah.
I hope that there's enough people that are starting to pick up on that.
Well, I mean, I'll say as a member of organizations like DSA, as somebody who's been doing Palestinian advocacy for most of my adult life, Jewish Americans, progressive Jewish Americans have always played a major role in saying "not in my name," and fighting for freedom. And it's one of these things that is really important to always make this distinction. Is that associating the actions of Israel, which is a nation state, with Jewish people, is incorrect. It's a dangerous conflation to make. Israel is a nation state with its own mentality, decisions, and things like that, and it doesn't represent Jewish people as a whole. And I think that one thing that's been very frightening. You see Barnaby Raines, who's, I don't know if you all are familiar, is a British journalist, commentator on like Novara Media, who's Jewish, has been talking about how the ways that the mass media, the state, and political organizations like the Democratic Party or the Labor Party have tried to use claims of anti-Semitism to silence people like Jeremy Corbyn, peace activists, and things like that. Makes it so that it's harder to actually fight anti-Semitism where it does exist, because there's no doubt about it that in the United States and in the United Kingdom, there has been an incredibly striking and very worrying increase in anti-Semitism. But you don't see the state or the government or the media really, coming out the things that propagate that, the things that support that, the things that are building those hate movements up. Instead, you have, these kind of absurd claims, like people like Richie Torres, claiming an organization like the DSA, which has a significant, Jewish participation rate, particularly in places like New York. There's a bunch of anti-Semites, right? It's cruel, it's nasty, it's wrong. And we have to be able to reject that outright, while also maintaining the fight, the very real fight against anti-Semitism in this country and abroad, because it's extremely worrying right now. As I was just saying, is like, as you are seeing this uptick, then instead of confronting that directly, we are, attacking Jewish people who are pro-peace or pro-human rights.
Yeah. I mean, well, one of the key things that I've always said that is the base of this is that we have to constantly keep reiterating the difference between Judaism and Zionism. And I think that obviously the media does a very good job at conflating those on purpose, because it obviously serves their benefit to do so. And at the same time, it does create an increase in anti-Semitism, and something that is really interesting. And I see it sort of the same way in this country in a different way, but like, we're taught as Jews, in Western Jews in this country, that we're taught that Arabs are lesser. We're taught to think less of them. We're taught that they're less civilized, that they're dirty, that they want to hurt us. Like, we're taught that, right? And I can't help but think, but when I look at the Palestinians, it's their contempt. Well, I mean, I can't speak for all of them, but their contempt isn't about Jews because they're Jews. Their contempt is about who their oppressor is. Their oppressors are Jews because they've created this Jewish state, right? So this is the thing. So their dislike, and now people being born in captivity, go figure that they would be angry about that. So their dislike and hatred towards Jews is completely understandable to me. Like, that I understand. Where in this country, in a lot of cases, it really is just people that just hate Jews because they hate Jews, right? So there's definitely a clear difference in those two things. And the fact that the Jews, the Israeli Jews, hate the Palestinians so much, that makes no sense to me at all. That I don't understand. I understand why they hate the Jews. Like that, it's the same to me in this country with blacks and whites. Like I understand why black people might not trust white people. I understand that. That makes total sense to me. But I have no idea what white people's issue are with black people. Like that's like that, you know what I'm saying? Like one's based on empirical evidence of problems and one isn't. And it's like they live in a mythology, these Zionists.
But everything is based on the fear of the unknown. That is why very often people form judgments about people in places that they don't know or they've never been to. And it's much easier to conflate it that way. So, for example, if you have people whose opinions are formed about, let's say, Gaza, and they've never actually been to Israel, then I don't need to hear your opinion, because whatever you're getting is, first of all, secondhand, and depending on who you're getting it from, is completely distorted from reality. And we see that. You know, Jen could not hold back. We ended up having a number of viral posts on social media go out regarding this issue.
I'm so angry.
And so
I am so angry. I can't.
As you should be, yeah.
No, I know. But what's so great about it for me is I am very specific as to who I'm angry at. Like I know who the problem is, and my goal is to direct everybody in the correct direction. That's the whole thing. Like if the lady, like the you know, like I'm a flight attendant, like the problem is not where people think the problem is, and so that's my goal. But I am like enraged, and I don't blame people who are born in captivity for wanting to kill their captors.
And then the other problem, before you chime in, the other problem, of course, being in South Florida is that, you know, when Jen ran for Congress against Wasserman Schultz in 2020, it wasn't an issue. This was an issue, but
it was an issue.
But this wasn't an issue at the time. Now, what you're really seeing is the complete unmasking of somebody like her, who is a bloodthirsty, genocidal lunatic who does not care one iota about what happens to these people. And she's much worse than the likes of the Jared Mauskowitzes of the world. She tries to be very nuanced in how she says kill them all. Others are just going to say kill them all. And, like John Fetterman, they're just not going to hide it. They're going to be very politically unkempt in terms of how they go about espousing their belief system. Whereas with her, she tries to shield it in a very carefully nuanced way to just say, I really care about
No, she comes off like an angry, vile troll. Thoughts?
No, one, I will just say on that, like the messaging stuff, I mean, it's so cynical and evil. The kind of Democratic Party official, or even just like a lot of liberals' performance of being like, oh, you know, I'm so sad about these deaths, right? But also, I do not support a ceasefire. I support actually increasing funding to Israel. We should send more weapons.
Where's your humanity calling for a ceasefire, David?
It's so bizarre, and you know, there's a cruelty in it too. I totally agree to sit here and say, oh, you know, I'm sad about what's going on, but then support those conditions, right? That is something that infuriates me. I'll also say that, like, one thing in this country, what I tell my audience. You know, when you're trying to talk to like a normal person and try to explain the situation, one of the worst things that you can do, and one of the things you see a lot in the media, is this kind of story of like, well, it's a thousands-year-old conflict between Arabic people and Jewish people and all this kind of stuff. No, start like where we are right now. There are millions of people who are held in captivity. They don't have the ability to build out water infrastructure, food infrastructure. They can't even build an airport. You know, in the West Bank, we've had a lot of people on the program to talk about conditions there. We had Bezel Adra on the program, who lives in and is in the West Bank. And, you know, just talking about how, like, we can't even put a pipe in to get water into our community without getting a permit from Israel. Surprise, surprise, Israel doesn't approve permits, again, to just do life, like basic life infrastructure like that. And then you have all this stuff about like, oh, well, the Palestinians, you know, they're barbaric and all this kind of stuff. They literally can't build a thriving society because Israel prevents them from doing that, right? So, like, talking about what actually is going on is really important, because everyone loves to abstract. Even the same kind of conversations about the conflict today, right? Instead of saying what's going on, well, there are millions of people who are held in captivity. They're being bombed. The reason that the majority population in Gaza is so young is because people don't live very long in Gaza.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's all this kind of, there's this kind of need by certain commentators and politicians and the media to talk very abstractly. So first principles, do you support violence or not violence, right? Or do you support this or that? And it's like, let's talk about what's actually going on here, what the material reality is, because then the picture becomes very clear what's going on. We have millions of people who Israel and the United States and other European powers are basically saying, you guys are forgotten people. We will take y'all sacrifice, thank you very much, to maintain a certain kind of status quo that's beneficial to us. And, you know, it's extremely, extremely, extremely cruel. So all these kind of abstract conversations, or even, you know, this thousands of years conflict, it's BS when you actually look at what's going on the ground. And, you know, as Michael Brooks, and I've been very happy, my good friend and comrade, passed away unfortunately a few years ago, you know, it's been very heartening to see some clips of him going viral over the past couple of weeks. And he has this great clip where he basically says, it's not complicated at all. In fact, it's very, very simple. Now, there are, like, in the weeds conversations that we can have, and I'm one for nuance all the way. But on a baseline, basic position, there are a bunch of people who live their lives in captivity, are bombed to hell, do not have the right to basically be able to form their own government, to do social services. They don't even control their own borders, right? So all this talk about, because there's this conflation too, we're just talking about Palestine as if it's like a country. No, that has been denied to them as well. You know, so like when you really look at the facts of it, it's the clearest thing ever. We need to end the occupation immediately. We need it. Well, first we need a ceasefire, then we need to end the occupation. And, you know, all this other stuff, there will be, you know, conflicts and questions and debates and things to have. But the thing that's so frightening is that we're not even having that. Right, we're having right now is just straight up denial of the atrocities that are ongoing. It doesn't even look, you know, it's horrifying to think, by the way, too, that like this is just the start, that this is going to get way worse over the next few days and weeks.
Well, that's what I said. I mean, at this point, to me, even if you had a ceasefire right now, which would be good, but the chain of events that has been set into motion based on turning off water, turning off electricity, like these things, 45% of the people's homes being destroyed, right? Like, yeah, the food, like little food coming in. You've set a chain in motion that will lead to, I don't understand how they get out of this without 1 million dead people, because now you've got people literally standing around rubble with nowhere to go and no water and no food. Like, how long does that take to, I mean, this is not, it's very
This
simple.
is a sophisticated military, you know, engaged in a bombing campaign of millions of people who have nowhere to go. I mean, yeah, no, I mean, you're totally right in the sense of like, where does this end? In fact, I actually don't even think the Israeli at this point with what has been set into motion, I mean, they're not even clear, by the way, about how this ends and what that they want. And it is extremely frightening because at a certain point, if you're just bombing people with no intention or plan or anything, right? Not that I would think it'd be justified if there was a plan. Don't get me wrong here, but it seems very clear that the government of Israel doesn't even have like an end goal other than like the mass evacuation and slaughter of Palestinian people.
I think it's just revenge. You know, it's, yeah, ultimately they want to get rid of the people, but, you know, but this particular campaign is really just revenge. And, you know, yeah, you would think, okay, is their goal to push them down into Egypt? Is that, you know, is that the, but then you wouldn't necessarily bomb the crossing, you know, like I don't, they're all over the place because they are just seeing red and they just want to kill them. That's what I think. And they care not about their own hostages. And one thing that I think is important is while all this is happening, I think a lot of people are taking their eye off the West Bank. And I think that there has been, from my understanding, a huge increase in the settler violence, that has been going on over there while people are distracted from you know, by Gaza. And, you know, they're just really, it's almost like a full on they're just taking all what's left. They're just taking all what's left. You guys had a little pieces of Swiss cheese over there and, you know, this little prison concentration camp. We're just going to clear you off and just have the whole thing.
David, I wanted
to, sorry.
No, go ahead. No, finish your thought first.
I was just going to say too, just to, you know, add to it, let's also not forget the Palestinian Israeli citizens too, who have been facing incredible abuse and attacks. I mean, there was a video of a bunch of Palestinian students being attacked by a mob just the other day. Right. So yeah, it's across the board in Gaza, in Israel, in the West Bank, a full-on assault of Palestinian people.
And yet I'll just say why you were scared.
Yeah, well, the only everything is going to be conflated in the worst possible way, and you brought up a very good point. And yes, I mean, obviously, rest in peace, Michael Brooks. You know, talk about a time where his voice is so very much needed. And I wanted to share this with you. I met him right before he passed. There was an event that he did with Crystal Aaron Mate, and I think it was the three of them that were there. And I know Aaron personally, and we were communicating, and there were the two of them were like in this like really in-depth conversation. And I happened to take a photograph of them talking to each other, and I sent it to Aaron, and I'm sure he still has it. He was very grateful that I sent it to him, and I just remember just the brief time that I talked to him. First, he thought the world of Jen, and that really meant a lot.
Which I wish you had told me then.
I
had no idea this. Loved him.
And the fact that he would never let people. He was always so on point with the facts, with the nuance of every specific issue.
Totally.
And that meant so much in that moment. Because one of the big problems that we seem to have, especially in the so-called left media spaces, is being able to distinguish when you absolutely need political nuance. And the sad reality is that Michael is one of the few people that I saw that was not motivated by money. But there are a lot of people in these spaces that are motivated by money. And so the decisions that they make in terms of how they will talk about certain things, the only person's name I'm going to mention because I absolutely detest him and I think he is the embodiment of the worst in this entire ecosystem. And that, of course, is David Pakman. And so
it's his thing, not mine.
But he's not the only one who's guilty. He just happens to be one that is extremely. I remember when he was talking about we need a coup to get. To get Maduro out and get Guaido in. And I'm thinking anyone who even takes this, who shares the same sentiments as Debbie Wasserman Schultz, get out.
He wants to shove. I think he wants to shove Pakman in like the gym locker.
Yeah, he's got like that really.
So bad.
I'm trying to think of like who the best.
I hate when I don't like talking about other people.
I don't want to talk about other people either, but I think it's important to talk about how the messaging in left political spaces is really it's completely discombobulated at this point. And then you have people like him that take it to a level where you might as well just be a complete ethno-Zionist who believes in mass genocide.
But that's not the left. Then by default, that's like Jews for Jesus. You cannot have.
Are you sure that's not possible?
It isn't. I have a cousin who says he's that, and I think it's ridiculous. Whatever. I reject that entirely. If you take Christ as your savior, you're de facto Christian. I'm done with you.
Fair enough.
But that's an argument I refuse. Like I've had that one too many times with people. But it's an oxymoron. That's the point. It's not a thing. You cannot say you're for an ethno state and then claim to be a leftist.
I wish more people would learn from Michael's message.
Oh yeah.
No, I mean we try not to do too much of coming after individuals. We'll do like a Jimmy Dore thing from time to time, or those.
He loves that shit. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, exactly. That's why we try not to do it too much.
Exactly. It's why we don't talk about. That's why I don't do it. Yeah.
But sometimes it can be helpful to sort of reach people because there are people who that's like what their feed is, and then you can reach folks. We did do a Pakman kind of breakdown in the most recent episode of Left Reckoning in the post game, the Patreon only side, because I got pretty fed up with the way that he was talking about this issue. I mean, this is somebody who for years has towed a very bad line on it. This is somebody who denies apartheid from the get-go, which I find to be just a heinous thing. But the reason that I ended up, feeling the need to really talk about Pakman in particular is he's starting to lead the charge and the attacks on people like Rashida Tlaib. Somebody like Rashida Tlaib, who's been at the forefront and fighting for humanity on this issue. I find it to be really nasty just in a moment like this to be locking arms with people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, the right wing, and those folks, and start calling out Rashida Tlaib by name. And when it comes to like the left, I mean, sorry to talk about other people, but it's like somebody like Pakman infuriates me a lot because I think they see their role. I won't talk about what is in people's heart, if it's money or not, who knows? Because you can also make a lot of money on YouTube by saying a lot of really dumb kind of ultra leftist stuff too, in fairness, right? But it's this orientation of sort of like, oh, well, the left is like too crazy and there's too many people who care about human rights on it. So we just need a very serious guy to be, nuanced and intelligent to break it down when it's BS in a conversation like this, right? Also, you talked about the Venezuela thing. Pakman, I remember he put out a video when there was the right-wing fascist Christian coup in Bolivia against Evo Morales, sort of chastising the quote revolutionary left. there would be people like Michael Brooks at the time, for getting it wrong. Well, no, there was a right-wing fascist coup. Evo Morales won that election, and thousands of people died. And because you wanted to sort of be like, oh, look, I'm the serious progressive who sort of backs American imperialism, anti-indigenous movements abroad, your desire to sort of play that role means that you're sort of lining up with the right. I don't think that that's somebody who I'm particularly interested in having in our movements, because it shows, one, a lack of understanding, if we're being kind and generous here, but more so, it shows that like you are a very fickle ally. Where when things get tough, when maybe taking a left-wing position on a topic is quote unquote like unpopular, even, like on this issue, I think it's becoming very, very clear that the American public is moving. But you should be advocating for Palestine, even if the polling numbers were bad, right? Because that's what we're supposed to do. That's the role of particularly in media, is that we're supposed to be here to tell the truth, to encourage growth within the working class movements in this country. And if you, at any moment that things get tough, you start locking arms with the right wing, I don't view you as an ally, Frank.
As somebody who was raised with this sort of Zionist mindset, what's really interesting is I don't think people who aren't raised that way have an understanding of this, but we're not raised with your same facts and history. A lot of information that was purposefully excluded from our education, as far as, even prior to the Nakba, but the Nakba and all this stuff having to do with Palestinian displacement, ethnic cleansing, which we were not only were we not taught that, like that, none of us were really taught that. But Jews are actually taught the exact opposite of that. And we're very programmed and very indoctrinated in this way. And when I say we, as I've said before, I'm talking about Western-raised Ashkenazi Jews in this country, probably I would assume UK or wherever, white Ashkenazi Jews who are raised with a modicum of Judaism. The perception is this. That's my point. And so these people, and I don't know Pacman's personal upbringing, but a lot of these people, it isn't just, I know you think it's like grifty and money, and I think there's that too, for sure. But there is this indoctrination that a lot of them have not been willing to look at the information that is now available. And I didn't realize that it had been classified and then declassified and all this stuff. For anybody listening, recommend Elon Poppy's book, The Ethnic Cleansing of Palestine. Probably the most, I think, it really does a good job of sort of bringing out that information that was previously classified. But people like Pacman, I think, just don't look at that. They're the willfully ignorant people. They don't want to know that. It's very contrary to their narrative. It's contrary to everything they were brought up in. And for people, the closer you were to Israel, as somebody who went there as part of a high school program, we were very brainwashed, the more indoctrinated, the harder it is to get out of it. And a lot of these people are just not willing to do that. They're just not willing, because it really takes away their entire, it's like learning Santa Claus is a mass murderer.
It
is. And it's very, very difficult. It's been very hard for me. And I can't imagine, and as somebody who, is curious and I, tend to pride myself on being reasonable. So, for me, it was very difficult. So I can't imagine for just somebody who doesn't really follow things, isn't really, that interested. They're not going to do that. It challenges their entire everything, what we think about Israel. And especially there's this woman, I said this story. I go to Pilates with this woman. She's Israeli. And she used to really, really like me. Notice I say used to. And then a couple of weeks ago in conversation, I suggested that people might not like being born in captivity. And now she won't even look at me. So this is the kind of, stuff. And I was very nice when I said it, I said it pleasantly. Although I do tend to be seen as somewhat sarcastic. I get that. But, it's, I'm done. You know what it is? I'm done dancing around with these people. I'm just done dancing around with their nonsense. I'm calling bullshit. I am not tolerating your gaslighting. I am to anybody who mentions the Bible to me, go stick it up their ass. And also, by the way, I am only willing to go back to let's say 47-ish in discussing the geopolitics of this. And anybody who wants to talk to me about the kingdom of David, they can go kick rocks. Okay. So I'm only, let's go back to, we can even go back to the end of World War I or wherever, but somewhere in modern history. Right. And anybody who goes before that, I will not entertain the discussion. Now you're just being stupid.
Yeah, and I also just have to say too that, like, it's a deep thing in this country in general. For example, like the San Antonio and Central Texas area, mainly with Christian evangelicals, is a huge booster of the state of Israel and the mass ethnic cleansing process ongoing there as well, right?
So you like John Hagee? Yeah. I lived in San Antonio for 6 years. My son was born there, so I am familiar with that.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's deep. It's really deep rooted here as well in a kind of different way. But and like in general, it's like having any kind of conversation with everyday people. I do think that there's a place for having a little bit of grace and knowing that, like, there's a lot of misinformation out there. It's purposeful, and finding a way. I never think that what we should do is accept somebody saying, for example, something odious or disgusting. You should react to that as you should. And there should be social consequences, by the way, for somebody who is saying those kind of things, right? If you have a friend who is sort of supporting the mass killing of Palestinians, no, like, that's something that's odious and you should confront them. I generally like try to advise people to, try to find the common ground, but there are moments where you have to be like, hey, that's a disgusting thing. And that's also like a part of rhetoric and a part of arguing, by the way, too, is that's a disgusting thing to say. That's a disgusting position to hold. And we're going to, socially, hey, I might not want to go and hang out with you, talk to you after saying something like that, right? Because there has to be that kind of social pressure as well. I do think it should be mainly directed at the people in power and the people who know better than just some person who's sort of, confused by the world.
Yeah.
Because as we said, there's a lot out there. Sorry.
And one of the topics that I think is great to break down the end of this conversation, really comes full circle on what we're talking about right now, which is if you are of the belief on two fronts, one, that religion defines your life, which means that reason is out the window, or you do not believe in the separation of church and state, which unfortunately a lot of people really have a big problem with, you get into a situation now where we have a new Speaker of the House. Granted, again, when it's divided government, we know how this is going to go. Nothing's going to get done. This is just all a bunch of hot air. But just the idea, I've always maintained that the biggest fault line within the Democratic Party, unequivocally, is that it is bought and paid for by Wall Street and Silicon Valley. The biggest fault line in the GOP is that they are completely working at the behest of the evangelical right. And whatever their beliefs are, they will eventually get somebody like Mike Pence, not as vice president, but at least in their mind, hopefully as president. And now they have a new Speaker of the House who, as far as I'm concerned, probably shares almost an identical belief system to Mike Pence and Mike Johnson. So we're going to play a quick video so you guys get an idea of what the new Speaker of the House is all about. I can assure you, you're not going to like it.
Steve Scalise mentioned that my first act as the Speaker was to bring the resolution to make formal and official in the congressional record our resolve to stand with Israel and against the barbarism of Hamas and all of its accomplices. It's not an accident that the first resolution was for Israel and my first trip was to come and be with you. I want everybody to know where we stand. This message is to the UN. There will be a ceasefire only when Hamas ceases to be a threat to Israel.
We don't live in a democracy, because a democracy is two wolves and a lamb deciding what's for dinner, okay? It's not just majority rule, it's a constitutional republic. And the founders set that up because they followed the biblical admonition on what a civil society is supposed to look like.
Roe v. Wade gave constitutional cover to the elective killing of unborn children in America, period. You think about the implications of that on the economy. We're all struggling here to cover the bases of Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid and all the rest. If we had all those able-bodied workers in the economy, we wouldn't be going upside down and toppling over like this. Listen,
the gentleman,
I will not yield. I will not. Roe was a terrible corruption of America's constitutional jurisprudence. You remember in the late 60s, we invented things like no-fault divorce laws. We invented the sexual revolution. We invented radical feminism. We invented legalized abortion in 1973, where the state, the government, sanctions the killing of the unborn. I mean, we know that we're living in a completely amoral society. And so people say, how can a young person go into their schoolhouse and open fire on their classmates? Because we've taught a whole generation, a couple of generations now of Americans, that there is no right and wrong.
As soon as I took the gavel, our work began, and we passed the resolution, as you noted.
in strong support of our strong ally and great friend Israel. We had to do that. And then I flew last night to Las Vegas and spoke to the Republican Jewish Coalition, as you noted, to send a further signal.
We got your signal. We got your signal. You're a total piece of shit. We get it.
He's not only is he a short man, unfortunately, I'm very judgmental.
He looks like a Keebler elf.
Yeah, I can't help it. I'm like, dude, are you going to dress up as the Keebler elf?
I really want to superimpose a little green hat on his head.
It's the idea that you're so forthcoming in this belief of, and it's like, oh, the end time. Wasn't it Sarah Palin?
Oh, we're heading to the end time. See, now here's where I'm starting to agree with them. They're winning me over on that. Oh, I agree. They're taking us to the end times. I don't think it's going to go how they think it's going to go, but I think that they're working it. I mean,
well, just like the whole statement that he made regarding, listen, you'll have a ceasefire when Hamas ceases to exist. It's like, you're just going to the more this is literally pouring fire on gasoline. That's what you're doing.
Right. Oh, he thinks that the children in Gaza are going to grow up to be really helpful to us. They're going to grow up and be friends with us. They're going to invite us to come over for dinner. They're going to want to be friends. Like, they act like Hamas is one person, one group of people, as opposed to an ideology. But more importantly, if you're indiscriminately bombing in a pretty small place and you don't know where your hostages are, suffice to say, you don't give a crap about your hostages.
But I think that also speaks for great volumes
like,
about,
do they care really?
Like, mentally, where are you at? Like, if you're
psycho,
and this is why, I mean, listen, I'm a pretty spiritual person. I believe in the possibility of God, but organized religion is bullshit, and everyone knows that it is. It's
God is not good, is what he's saying to you. I have a picture of Hitch right over there. He's saying God is not good.
You would dig the picture of Hitch, my friend.
I've had it for a long time. It's really cool. Every time we're talking about reason, I look over and I'm like this. Anyway,
and I can respect people's religious beliefs. There's nothing wrong with that, but keep it the F out of politics. It does not compute. One does not lead to the other, which is why the most important document in this country is not the Bible, it's the Constitution. And so for people who want to pretend like it actually is the Bible.
And that has its issues too.
Sure. But keep your Bible the F out of politics, and the GOP just refuses to do it. Now, that doesn't mean the Democrats are not guilty of it, because I think, religiously speaking, I think Pelosi and Biden are just as nuts as the rest of them are. But there is something to be said for just how overt the significant portion of the GOP, the far-right GOP, really is when it comes to this religious stuff. It's terrible.
I mean, there's a few things in there. And, like, first of all, the absolutely genocidal rhetoric to say that we're not going to stop bombing millions of people until Hamas disappears. I mean, that's nothing else but a full-throated endorsement of just mass slaughter and killing. That's truly, I mean, I was going to say unimaginable. I mean, the fact is it's become feeling more and more of a reality, but just, unconscionable, right? Because, like, let's not forget where something like Hamas comes into power. The secular movement in Palestine has been completely attacked for decades now. The Palestinian Authority, through like tactical mistakes on their own, have also lost tremendous amounts of legitimacy. And even if there was some kind of like horrifying which they could play, and this boom, everyone in Hamas just goes away, right? It's just slaughtered. No, what do you think, that there's like armed resistance is gonna stop after that? It's absurd, because something else is gonna come and take its place, because the root cause of all of this is the occupation. You have to end the occupation before we're gonna be able to get anywhere. And that's any reasonable person. And in fact, I know that these people also recognize that as well. Which is why the things that they're saying right now are so psychotic, because they know what it is that they're endorsing. But he did that thing that, again, going back to these kind of like nuanced guys or whatever we were talking about on the left.
Yeah.
That right-wing argument there about like, well, this is not a democracy, it's a republic, is such a classic dweeb argument, because
it's just funny. It's funny for any of us who have ever taken a philosophy course or have any concept of anything. It's really fun. I've had to clarify before. I'm like, yes, I understand the mechanism, how it works.
Yeah. But also, if you spend any time, looking at American history or American political thought, it's very clear why that system was set up. Is like, one, the kind of classic progressive argument is like, well, we need to have something that could maintain a slave system in this country. But two, because even the founders that we might say were more on the progressive side, or at least like not on the full-throated endorsement of slavery, they all feared one thing more than anything else, is what they called the mob. And what they mean by that is they were worried about everyday, regular people running the country. It's a hyper-reactionary belief. It's something that's been in this country from the get-go. And the fact is that the reason that the kind of popular understanding of this country is that it's a democracy is because that is the popular, the kind of popular will on this question. People want to live in a country where they have freedom, where they have the ability to affect what's going on. They don't want to be ruled over by a small group of elites. We've seen all across this country, you know, movements, some more effective, some clearer than others, saying, hey, we're done with this kind of top-down rule in this country. We want a truly representative system. So, you know, I hope that these guys keep on leaning on their kind of anti-democratic positions, at least in like the, you know, kind of popular media, so that we can say, hey, yeah, you see like democracy and freedom and all those things that we do like, the right's very clearly against that. And we can also point to a lot of people in the Democratic Party that are really against that. And I think it opens up an opportunity for, you know, people who believe in working class politics, working class democracy, to start to own that lane and say, hey, yeah, we are the group of people that believes in democracy as a principle, full stop. It's the right that is trying to muddy the water on those kind of things. But I mean, Johnson is a complete psychopath. I think the most likely thing that's going to come out of this is very likely that we're having a government shutdown, which would mean tremendous damage for working class people in this country. Certainly tremendous amounts of monetary and rhetorical support for Israel's mass slaughter of people. And it's pretty wild to see the Republican Party. I mean, I'm sure in Florida it's somewhat similar. But here in Texas, the Republican Party is in complete disarray, in a complete civil war with itself. It's a party that's not even effective at governing in the way that Republicans want it to govern, if that makes sense. Because they're I mean, right now we're trying to do, this state here is trying to privatize education. And because of all of these inter-party spats that are going on, who knows, maybe they'll come together to, you know, brutalize children. Favorite pastime of the Republican.
Well, nothing brings people together more than a genocide. You know, nothing is better than that. But I feel like this is so all-consuming for me right now, and I know that that's how I feel like I need to have that, because it's the only way to sort of bear witness to the people that are living it. And so it's like, for the people that are living it, which I can't even. You know, so for me, it's sort of like the least I can do is sort of sit in it, and in all of its complete unpleasantness. And yeah, that's partially what keeps me really angry and enraged. But I'm not going to tolerate any of the ridiculous whitewashing or gaslighting or any of the bullshit anymore. This is ridiculous. I feel like when my kids were little and people would be fighting and somebody had to be the grown-up in the room, that's kind of how this feels to me. Except for the children were all psychotic. But it's like, this is absurd. Like, think about how crazy this is, that these are grown people and they're just okay with what they're doing. Like, they're just okay with this. And the rest of us are being collectively punished because we have to sit here and watch it, and there's really not anything we can do about it. And that's what's so frustrating, because like, if we could talk about it and educate people and all that, but ultimately there's this feeling that at the end of the day, there's nothing we can do about it but sit here and watch it. And it's just, I'm so furious. Like, this is so frustrating.
The one thing that we can do, and the one thing that we must do, is that there must be political consequences for those 100%. Who are either silent or, even worse, are advocating for it. And that is something that really hasn't happened. But
I'm looking at every single Jewish person in Congress. I am just, every single one of you disgusts me. And that even goes for Bernie right now, which I never thought that I would ever feel this way.
It's sad. It's been hard. It's been heartbreaking to.
Right?
And he knows better.
It's just every single one of them just is disgusting. Are they all so scared of AIPAC? What is it? Is it that your job is so important to you that it's worth?
That's really
I don't understand.
But that's why I've always maintained that the one member of the squad that really had it all together was Rashida, because she's willing to put her career on the line.
And also, let's say she has no choice.
That's true.
And Bush too. I will throw her in there too.
Corey's also out there as well. You know, Alex is in a completely different situation, as is Ayanna. Ayanna, of course, is eyeing for Warren's Senate seat. You know, everyone is going to do what they're going to do. But if you're going to put your career ahead of humanity, forget it. It's like there is no justification. There just isn't. In Rashida's case, she put out a post basically telling Joe Biden to get fucked in Michigan. And that takes a lot of, you know, she's basically saying, I'm willing to lose my career in politics.
Because let's be real, politics shouldn't be a career. It's not a career. It's a term of service. You shouldn't be depending on it for a career. Go serve your time, help some people, move on to something else. So no, it shouldn't end her career because her career isn't that.
Now, I actually don't think she's going to lose because I think the people that she represents really love her and they know that she's fighting on their behalf. She's not a phony like a lot of other people are. If you're really willing to do this, because no one else is, everyone else is a Cory Booker wannabe. Everyone else is just ready, willing, and able to put on the show and make it seem like I am a genuinely caring person. But, you know, we have to do what we have to do.
You take money from evil people, then you're doing the deeds of evil people.
Katie Porter is probably one of the very best examples because she is she is a great congresswoman. And yet the way that she has conducted herself on this particular issue,
I'm so sad.
She's not just in favor of Israel. She's in favor of getting Iran involved in this equation. And it's like, you can throw everything away. And we have been fierce defenders of her, especially against the likes of Maxine Waters, who had her kicked off the Finance Committee. What a surprise. To me, this is all about right now, you're going to see where people really stand.
Yeah.
Because there is nowhere to hide.
No.
Nowhere to hide.
And I think one thing that's like really notable about Rashida and Cori Bush, and I think goes into like the larger strategy that our movement is going to sort of have to be reckoned with and figuring what we're going to do in the long term is we need to start having people who are embedded and deeply rooted within the working class movement and within these kind of progressive movements and organizations, right? So you see somebody like Rashida and Cori oftentimes taking like the DSA line on an issue where with Bowman or an AOC, they will do a lot. And I think that it's important to be able to make distinctions because there is also like this narrative around all of them as like necessarily being sellouts. My whole thing is always that like when they make a bad vote, it's like, well, it's more likely than not that they just have bad politics, right? And that's unacceptable too, versus being, I don't know, kind of cynical, right? If that makes sense.
Sure.
But what we need, what's becoming abundantly clear is just hoping that we can sort of shoot off superstars, right? People who have rhetorical ability, people who are good on camera into positions of high office isn't working for the things that we need done. I think the railroad votes showed that pretty clearly. When, you know, but again, you know, the people who stood with these people like Tlaib, you know, were people who were deeply, are much deeper rooted within, for example, their local DSA chapter than some of these other DSA elected officials. And like the real lesson I think has to be is that when we're building these campaigns, building these movements, we really have to be supporting people who are of and in these things versus people who sort of come late or have 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Because the fact is that these movements on the organized side are not strong enough as a voting base to sort of be the boss. So what we need to have like a very committed and clear line when we are getting people in positions of power that they are in this movement as members and as leaders of it versus, oh, this progressive movement seems to be sort of shooting up this candidate we're going to associate with. Right. It's becoming very clear that the association isn't working. And I've been very inspired by Rashida and Cori, for example, for taking the leadership on this, you know, and to give credit where it's due, I've been happy to see some of those other members support the ceasefire. But, you know, we need a hell of a lot more than that right now. Clearly.
Listen, I agree 1,000%. This is why we always give credit where credit's due to Thomas Massie. He is the one principled conservative that is out there who is not only is he a principled conservative, but he has his entire home, the entire estate that he lives on is all powered by clean energy. So the fact that there are lessons to be learned here.
I am happy to see, David, that you're not completely like down on the whole electoral politics. There's a lot of people that are very throw the whole thing out. And obviously we need both. I mean, look, it's by no means the all, but I'm glad to see. And you know, given that you guys really definitely deal with very heady shit, you have a very, like, there's a lightness about you, which is really nice. And I appreciate that. Like, because, you know, it's hard to not be negative. I mean, it really is, because especially when we're talking about electoral politics, because we've all been very disappointed more than not.
Of course.
But I think that if you look at it in the aggregate, we have made some progress in terms
we've made tremendous progress. It's not where we need to be. But I get very frustrated. Like, I get extremely frustrated at these things when people who we are sort of around do wrong. It's infuriating, right? Yeah. But my reaction to that is always like, okay, well, what is necessary to make these things stronger than they are right now? And, you know, I'm 30, but I've been around like the socialist left for a long time, pre-Bernie, and I remember how dark and lonely that was.
Yeah.
When most people's politics was sort of like a personal thing, and it was sort of like, I'm viewing the world, I can't change anything. But I have the correct view of that, and I 100% get that. I've been there, but at a certain point, we have to figure out where are we right now, and how can we get to where we need to be, and that's going to mean, you know, mass mobilizations of people. That's going to mean creating kind of organizations that have not just the correct line, but the capacity to act. It's a different tact here, but like, you know, one thing that I really love is, like, you know, I'm a Green New Deal supporter. And, you know, we've seen some strides on that. It's obviously gone way to the back burner under Joe Biden. But one of the things I really like about the Green New Deal was something like a just transition, right? A just transition for oil and gas workers being here in Texas. That's super important. And, you know, you go and you talk to people who work in those industries and you say, hey, I support a just transition. And people say, you know, that sounds great, but I don't believe you. Right. And what I mean by that is, like, we can have the right arguments as to what we want to do, but we also need to convince people that participating in politics, participating in our movements and things like that is actually going to be able to achieve something to win. So it's not a conservative argument of saying, oh, what we need to do is be centrists or not advocate for the things that we want. But it means that we have a very hard role in front of us, which is being correct, having the correct prognosis in politics and all that kind of stuff, but also building up the capacity on our movements to be able to influence change or get people in positions of power so that we can shift these things. And I get incredibly frustrated because there's two camps, right? There's one camp that's like, oh, we shouldn't criticize because, you know, it's a tough process, all this. No, we got to be criticizing, we got to be moving. And then there's the other group that's sort of like, oh, well, we didn't get Medicare for all in 4 years. You know, this whole project we should throw in the dustbin.
Right.
That's incorrect too. And it sucks. It really sucks that things are as bad as they are. But it's just like, you got to buck up and get on the horse. I mean, it's tough. It's a long fight.
From Texas?
I am, yeah.
Okay, and you live where, in Austin?
Yeah.
Figures you live in Austin. You live in the cool place. I went to law school at St. Mary's, and I have a lot of friends that are judges and or legislators and people. So I'm still licensed in Texas. I will not give that up. My husband says every year, he's like, why am I still paying for this? I'm like, because I sat for 3 days for that test. You will pay for my license fee.
Who'd you clerk with again?
I clerked for a federal judge in San Antonio. Her name is Pam Matthey. And she was amazing. I loved clerking for her, but the truth is there's a huge difference between federal and state, and federal judges are at a whole different level. And even if you don't like their politics, the level of professionalism in a federal court is definitely a whole different animal for people who don't know. But she was amazing. I love Texas. My son's a Texan. He still brags about being born in Texas.
Oh yeah.
I would still be there, actually. My husband ended up getting a job back here where I'm from, but I was very happy.
You know, Texas, and we'll leave on this note, you know, Texas is a great example of a great state with not great politics in 100%. Terms of the leadership in Austin.
But the people are so
correct.
Good.
But that is also a reflection of the way things are overall in the country. I think this is a great country that offers an incredible opportunity, but we could be so much better. The reason we're not is because the select few that really are controlling the show between Dallas, Fort Worth, Austin,
you mean,
San
what about
Antonio,
people like
Houston.
Greg Abbott who are perfectly okay
that's
slicing up
example.
women and their babies?
But that's an example of
he's
somebody who isn't reflective of where the overwhelming majority of people are. And so to that degree, being involved in electoral politics is absolutely necessary, but also recognizing that the system is broken. And when we tell you that sans person you're supporting is only going to lead to a road to nowhere, then you people that are in the populist left, not the overwoke left, but the people who are on it with the labor movement.
The overwoke left. No.
But it's point being.
I was there when W was there. Look, let me tell you, when he was, oh my God. And here's the thing, I actually.
He read at my elementary school when I was a kid here.
Oh my God. So you
When
were,
he was
you
governor.
obviously didn't vote in the 2000 election, but I actually did. I was living in San Antonio and I actually voted for Ralph Nader because I traded my vote with someone in Oregon or some such thing because that was a swing. I don't know, whatever. It didn't matter. I could have written in Scooby-Doo. I lived in Texas, but I somewhat feel resentful of Texas for unleashing that man.
How do you go from Ann Rich to,
Well, Ann Richards,
and W is an absolute monster. Do not misunderstand me here at all.
Yeah.
But one thing that's really notable is just how much more horrifying the right wing has gotten in this country. One of his things that he was sort of running on when he was in Texas, and then even when he was president, was on some form of amnesty or, pushing back against the kind of horrific border policies. And the Republican Party just completely sprinted in the other direction. But I will say this, like, if you don't mind me making like a quick pitch to people, a lot of the stuff I do write for Jacobin Magazine, and we also do on Left Reckoning, is trying to reclaim the progressive and working class politics of wherever you're at. And Texas has an incredibly proud tradition of pro-labor politics, of populist movements, of like just real incredible fights between everyday people and the rich and the powerful. And that history is very purposefully hidden from us. One of the stories I covered in Jacobin was about this great like cowboy revolution against barbed wire fencing, because after the Civil War, all these big land barons came. They started taking over all the land in Texas and cutting people off from the water, from the grazing land, from all these kind of things. And people didn't take it sitting down. They organized themselves into these gangs, and they would go and tear down fences and fight with the bosses and their goons. I love this story because it's a very fascinating bit here, but I really love it because the way that this story is always sort of told in Texas is like, well, this is how law and order came to the state of Texas because the Texas Rangers brutally put down this revolution. But the fact of the matter is, if you're somebody from Texas who has roots here, like, you are far more likely to be related to a fence cutter than you are to be to a Texas Ranger. And I think that like being able to be competent and being able to talk about our history is something that's really, really critical. I have like political disagreements with some of his stuff, but Michael Harrington, the founder of the DSA, has a line that has always sort of stuck with me, and I think it's important for leftists to be able to orient themselves around it, where he says, if people want to change this country because they hate it, then the people will never believe in you, they will never support you, and they'll be right. And the fact of the matter is that like I think that that's something we should hold true to ourselves. Is that like I'm a democratic socialist. I want to see radical changes in this country, and I believe in the people of this country a lot. That kind of everyday solidarity and kindness, the anti-war sentiment, the horror that most people get when they see these kind of things. That gives me a lot of hope for the future, even in really dire situations. And we should never let a bunch of monstrous folk like Greg Abbott or Ron DeSantis or any of these other folks deny us who we are as a people. And I think as the left, we should be able to uphold, our history and the people. Because at the end of the day, what's the kind of fundamental belief of leftists is that we believe in everyday people. And we should be able to sort of hold that truth in the way that we talk about everyday folks and in our politics and things. Sorry if I got a little preachy, but I think it's really important.
It's well said. And I think to me, that's how I always sort of evaluate if somebody's on my mission, and it really has nothing to do with policy, and it has everything to do with just sort of how you view your position in the world and how you view your place in the world. And to me, it's either you believe that we have a responsibility to the least of these, or you do not believe that. It's really, and when I know that somebody is on my mission, then I can talk about, okay, well, what's the best policy? What's the best way to get there? But the problem is there are people that are just in charge that are just not on our mission. Mm-hmm. So, debating policy is stupid. They're never going to, because they're not trying to do what you're trying to do. So I just like to keep people focused on the mission. And it's very hard because the politics and the bullshit and the partisan stuff gets so interfering. And I always just try to break it down. Are you on my mission? I don't care what color you wear, what label, you know what I mean? Like, that's not the issue, but that's what I think is so important. And I think that that's basically what you're saying is like, keep your eye on what's important. And that's just helping people. And that's what we're trying to do, you know?
David, thank you so much for coming on this afternoon. Please let people know how they can follow you, find your work. As you mentioned, you write for Jacobin, Life Reckoning podcast, anything you want to plug. It was obviously a pleasure, and definitely we'll have definitely have you back. You got to come back.
I'm always jealous when I see you guys having your whole like left little talking parties. First of all, I don't ever see women there. I'm just saying, and not to like play the lady card.
Just invite Jen.
No, I'm not smart enough to go hang out and talk with them. Oh, maybe I was when I was their age, but 2 children, lots of cannabis. Like I can't. I don't know. They have very, very deep conversation, but I like it a lot. I'm very. You boys are such nice boys. That's what I think.
Well, thank you so much, and I do appreciate the invite so much, and we'll have to definitely do it again.
Thank you.
It took so long. Yeah, I mean, just really fast. I mean, you can read my my stuff in Jacobin magazine. I have a big piece coming out early next month on the Southern Tenant Farmers Union, which was one of the first interracial unions in the South. Incredible story. I've been working on it for a while, so really keep your eye out for that. You guys can listen to us on Left Reckoning, which goes out Tuesdays at 7 Central. We got Malika Jabali on the program tomorrow, who's a good friend of ours who just has a great book out called "It's Not You, It's Capitalism." So keep your eye out for that. I do like Q&A streams on Thursday afternoons, so come by for that. And I can't announce fully yet, but just for people, particularly folks in Texas who are interested in Texas, I'm working with a bunch of people on a pretty major media project that's going to be launching in the spring of 2024. So keep tuned in to us. You can follow me on Twitter at David Griscom to get updates on that. Very excited. But yeah, really, thank y'all so much.
Thank you for coming on.
I do appreciate it so much.
Actually, it's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet y'all too.
Thanks,
Take care.
Bye.
A lot of fun.
Well, you know, first of all, I love Texans. I do. And people, like, he is right. Texas has a very rich history, and it isn't what people think it is. When I lived in San Antonio, something that was always very clear to me is that, like, there are families and people, Mexican families specifically, that lived there before there was inside of our border. So they did not come here, right? Like, so I always thought it was so interesting, like people that would treat Mexicans in Texas like immigrants when they never came here. They were there minding their business. And then we decided to draw our little border, our fence around them. But yeah, Texas has a really, really interesting history. It's very diverse.
Indeed.
Even Jews in Texas is diverse.
Metal, welcome. So as we mentioned at the top, we are going to be making a more concerted effort, especially to accommodate our guests going forward. You will either see us at 1 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time or 9 p.m. Eastern Time, Mondays and Thursdays. That doesn't change, but we wanted to give you guys a heads up. And on Thursday,
guys, it's good. Thursday, we're talking with Norman Finkelstein
at
1 o'clock. So, and we've had Norman on before. He's amazing. But it's really important. And we're going to keep harping on this. I'm going to keep harping on this. It's not going to stop, and it's just going to keep going. And on Saturday, I will be in DC. There is a march at 2. My understanding is that I don't know when it officially starts, but at 2 o'clock is where people are gathering. This isn't going away.
No, it's definitely not going away.
I'm not going to stop with these people.
And again, I'm sure it would be passionate for you if it was not for, obviously, relating to what's happening in Israel-Palestine right now. But the fact that you happen to have a congresswoman that is so full-throatedly in favor of what is happening right now. Is a big problem.
Well, okay. Now with her, I will say this. I will give her props for consistency. That woman has not met a war she hasn't wanted to overfund.
Sure.
That woman has.
So it's not like you're going to see something not coming from her. Like if she said something good, that would be the
right. Like actually, if she supported a ceasefire, I honestly think I would like fall over. So she's acting very true to form. I would expect nothing less of her than to be full on pro-war, pro-dead people. She doesn't care. She doesn't care. She really doesn't care. She gets too much money from places like Raytheon and Northrop Grumman, not to mention her insider trading. God knows what she's invested in with this war coming up.
Jessica, there's nothing surprising at all about this. Netflix is a global company, and the overwhelming majority of the globe believes in a free Palestine.
Yeah, we are the minority.
This is a very unique global phenomenon. It is the United States, Israel, which is really United States, Middle East.
UK.
And the UK. And then, of course, a whole bunch of very small third world, American adjacent, or, you know, what
like Papua New Guinea.
Yeah.
You know, the countries that we basically tell them, you'll vote with us or we'll destroy you.
Well, they are under, much like Venezuela, they use our currency. And we can basically bankrupt their country if they don't go along with what we're doing. The only reason you can't bankrupt Venezuela is because Venezuela controls 25% of the crude oil supply on the planet.
You're not wrong, Metal. And this is a big problem, is we only see anti-war talking points coming from the right.
But again, even if the reason they're doing it is because they have an austerity streak in their political disposition.
Or they would rather allocate the war money to China,
Whatever.
which is, well, no, but I want, Metal, please know that a lot of the people that you're talking about.
Yeah, they want to give it to Taiwan.
Yeah. Like, it's not that they're anti-war. No. They just want the war somewhere else.
You want to know who's anti-war in the GOP? Thomas Massey's anti-war.
I don't think I've even heard. Rand Paul didn't even.
Rand Paul's anti-war. Mike,
but he didn't even call for a ceasefire. Like, I don't understand what is wrong with these people. Oh my God.
The closer we get to the election, the more this is going to become an absolutely insane issue, because people are going to literally be saying, "I justify murder, mass murder."
Oh,
genocidal mass murder.
I honestly do not see at this point how there doesn't end up being 1 million dead plus, 1 million plus dead people. I don't understand. At this point, even if they stop the bombing, I do not see how this does not lead to that. Even though it might take a month of living in a desert, like it might not happen as quickly, but at this point, when you've eliminated 45% of the housing and the shelter, they have no food really coming in. And by the way, Israel has been regulating the amount of food that goes in there for so many years, to the point of caloric intake per person, so as to only have enough to keep them from starving. So you have no food, no water, no gas coming in, machinery shutting down, people that need things like dialysis, babies that actually are in incubators, all of those things. The ripple effect of this, I do not see how there already isn't going to be 1 million people dead. I honestly don't. I don't understand that. And I keep asking, and I can't. I asked my husband this. He's a physician. So I thought, okay, you'll know the answer to this. There's no power. There's no water. There's no way out. And they're living in rubble. What's the life expectancy? Even if you stop bombing right now. See, that's the thing. I don't understand that we're like.
Go along to get along.
Every single Jewish person in Congress, this is your legacy. This is your legacy.
Yeah. If you get an opportunity to speak on Saturday, I'm sure you'll be very clear in that statement.
I don't know that I ever get a chance to speak on Saturday, but I am extremely clear on my statement. You're participating, condoning, and conducting a genocide. You are all signed on with that. And that will be what you're known for. And for anybody there, and as long as I am alive, I will make sure that every single Jewish person in Congress, that is what you were known for.
Smash that like button, subscribe, share, do all those things that we ask you to do. You will see us again on Thursday at 1 o'clock with Norman Finkelstein. Have a great week, y'all.